Hi, my name is David Schnurman. I am the CEO of Lawline and the current president of Entrepreneurs Organization in New York. On today's show, we're going to talk about why entrepreneurs can't take action, why they're more fearful than they want to be, and why they don't have focus. We're going to put it all together to share with you how you can get out of your comfort zone, but more importantly, stay there longer. And there's one reason why we want to do this, is we want to fast forward our impact on the world around us as an entrepreneur. So stay tuned if you want to learn how to be more fearless and focused. See you soon.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything. Let me ask you, do you need to up-level your leadership? Well, on this episode, you're going to discover how to fast forward both your mindset and your impact. How? Well, you have to catch the episode, I guess, to find out. Remember, you can chat about this episode of the show or any past episodes in our Facebook group. Just go to Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. Just search for that on Facebook. If you're a new listener, a new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on the usual outlets, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we always need your help in staying relevant. So please, get over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. We really, really appreciate that. And also, you can catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday, all the way from, let's look, Wisconsin, Philadelphia, all the way to Florida, Georgia. We're out there. If you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every show. We're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. By the way, you can listen in via Google Home or Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, entrepreneur, or leader in any capacity, you know that there is an ever-increasing demand to move faster. But the truth is, as we move faster, it's also easier to become more and more afraid. So the question becomes, how can you develop the mindset that will accelerate you and your business through the fear onto greater and greater levels of success? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. Our guest today is David Schnurman. Now, pronounce that right for me. I want to make sure I get it right.
No, it's pretty good, Schnurman.
Schnurman, see, I got it right. Okay, good.
Okay, I think I called you Dove the first time we met. So
yeah, there you go. So we're equal now. David is the founder and CEO of Lawline, the leading provider of online continuing education, legal education in the U.S. The company recently celebrated serving, wait for this, over 150,000 attorneys with over, wait for it, 3 million courses completed. David is also currently the president of the Entrepreneur Organization in New York. He's the author of the new, highly anticipated business book, The Fast Forward Mindset. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and help me to welcome David Schnurman.
That was amazing. Thank you, Dave.
Good to have you here, mate.
I'm super excited to meet this guy because he sounds amazing.
Well, David and I, in case you don't know, if you're a listener and you don't know David before, David also has a podcast, and I was honored to be a guest on his podcast for the Entrepreneurs Organization, and we had a great time on there. And obviously, this is a great thing to do, is to come back and have it go the other way, because you have done some pretty amazing things, my friend. Pretty amazing.
I always feel, thank you very much. I really appreciate being here today. I was looking forward to this for a long, long time. And I
It
always
took a
feel,
while.
I think in terms of fast forwarding, I think listening is one of the key components to it. So I was very impressed with our first conversation. And I knew if I can get you on a podcast and listen to your story, I would learn a lot and to see everything you've done. And so it was really, really appreciated that time to do that.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it was great for both of us. I mean, I really enjoyed being on there. But I want to jump into you and your material here, because I think that I want to make sure that we all fully understand when you say the fast forward mindset, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, let's just go to that as the basics before we jump into anything else.
The very, very one sentence meaning is how to fast forward your impact on the world around you. It's not about getting a bigger house, a bigger business, making more money. It's how do you fast forward your impact? So in 20 years from now, or whatever time period you want to put, you won't have regrets when you look backwards. And it came from a conversation I had with my dad when I was 40 years old. I turned 40 just less than 2 years ago, where I looked back on the past 20 years and I said to my dad, definitely be proud of everything I've accomplished. But I also said to him that my 20-year-old self would have expected me to have a bigger business and, be more famous. And my dad kind of shot back at me. He's like, that's ridiculous. Many people who want to have what you have. And I realized it wasn't about what I wanted or more fame. It was the voice inside my head that expected me to impact millions of people by now. And maybe it's more grandiose than I thought, but I realized if I don't do something soon, I'm not going to be able to fast forward my impact, and I'll be 60 and having the same kind of conversation with my dad.
That's a great point, because I think that certainly I can clearly remember being 20 and even 30 years old and feeling like I had so much time. And, you're 40 before you know it, and you're 60 before you know it. And the adage that time goes faster as you get older is not a lie. It's not a lie. You suddenly notice, and actually, if you look at it outside of the contemporaries of time, as in a clock, and you actually understand that when you ask a 10-year-old, what did they do when they were 8? They can't remember, because that was a quarter of their life away, right? Yeah. But when we are looking forward, when we go, well, what were you doing 2 years ago? It's easy, right? Because we're looking forward and going, that time is very short.
Well, when you have 20 years of work experience after college under your belt, you realize how quickly 20 years can go by. And just to give you chills, 9/11 is almost 20 years ago.
Exactly.
And that to me is now a maturity thing, where I used to never think more than 12 to 24 months ahead. I can now think a decade to 2 decades ahead. And that's actually what's giving me my focus right now, and my ability to be more fearless.
So let's go into that, because that's an important thing, because it's this fast forward mindset is actually about becoming not only more fearless but more focused. And you and I were talking about that there was a time when focus wasn't exactly your greatest strength. Talk to us a little bit about that, because this is quite the shift.
So there's 3 steps to the fast forward mindset. Step 1 is take action. Step 2 is nip fear in the bud. And step 3 is find your focus. It's in a way similar, but not the same as ready, fire, aim. Because, you got to take action, and then you fire, and then you got to figure out your focus afterwards. This is sort of similar, but it's much more specific. And here's the 2 things when I talk about focus that change the game for me.
Okay.
Number 1 was keeping my commitments. And there was something very specific, one line in a book that changed my mindset. And this is why books are so important to me. And I can share it with you if you want.
Please.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
It was The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of that book?
I know. Yes, I know the book well.
Cool. So it's principle number 54 is keep your agreements. In principle number 54, there was one line that shifted my thinking, where he talked about an example of, he held this class, and everybody in the class had to sign an agreement. And one of the things that it said is they wouldn't be late. And then a couple of days later, some people were late. And so what happened was, he said, you broke your agreement. And he goes, well, I can't control traffic. And Jack says to him, well, what if I told you if you were late, somebody you know would die, somebody you loved would die? And he goes, well, if that was the case, then I would never leave the classroom because that's how important it is to me. And while it's an extreme example, it's designed to make you realize you have more control than you realize of keeping your commitments. And at that time, I was canceling on meetings 10 minutes ahead of time. I wasn't cleaning the dishes at home when I said I would, and I wasn't taking care of my health. I just had twins and they were 3 years old. And so I made a commitment to run my first marathon when I never ran any more than 3 miles before. And I said, if I can keep that, then I can probably keep any commitment I want, I set my mind to. And it was in the process of running the marathon where I realized why millions of people can run marathons. It's because they have a set training plan that it's very simple. It has goals and dates attached to goals. And I realized the reason I couldn't keep focus as much as I thought I could is I thought I was writing plans, but I was not putting dates to anything. I was saying all these great things I'm going to do, but I couldn't commit to a specific date. So it was actually running on passion, not a plan. And then we hired a coach for our company, and I realized the same thing he was teaching us was the same thing. And he was a scaling up coach, through Gazelles, is the same thing I learned in the marathon training plan. And that's where I started shifting to realizing focus is actually about slowing down and being more patient, which is kind of counterintuitive.
So again, that is counterintuitive, especially in the context of, really having a fast forward mindset. Seems like we'll slow down a bit, but this is interesting to me because, you've got this moment of realization. And how did you, you were running before. You said you'd never run more than 3 miles, I think you said?
The 5K, so just over.
5K, yeah. So was the choice to run a marathon an example, or was it something that you just had done again without a plan and then realized that there were these incremental steps?
So I knew there were training plans online. And the thing about a marathon training plan, it's the most time-tested plan you'll ever have as an entrepreneur. Because when you're starting a business or you're doing a podcast, or you're creating a show, there's no set intervals. If you do this exactly the way it was, you'll get through it. So what happened is most people don't even have a plan. No. And not only do they not have a plan, they don't have a vision. And what's the vision of a marathon? What's the vision of a marathon?
Crossing line.
26.2 miles.
Yeah.
So as soon as they hit a wall, whether it be their dad telling them it's a bad idea or not figuring it out, what happens? They pivot.
It goes away.
They stop. Yeah. They don't keep their commitment. And so that's why I realized that the combination of keeping your commitment, having a plan with dates attached to it, is the simplest way. And then there's a little bit more that I realized is having accountability buddy. I had somebody running with me. And then and the last thing that was really a game changer for me in finding focus was something that I learned from Jerry Seinfeld, and it's called "Don't Break the Chain." Have you ever heard of that?
I have not.
Good. I'm happy. Good. So don't break the chain is very simple. When he was a new comedian, he asked an old time comedian what's the best way to write jokes, and he said to him, instead of spending a week once a week and spending all day writing the jokes, write 3 jokes a day, every day, and never stop. And every day you do it, put an X on the calendar. And after a week or 2, your job is to not break the chain of X's. And so it's small incremental things to do daily that really make the difference. And so I combine that all. And I know they say this a lot when they're on TV, is like in the book, but in the book, I make it really simple on how I sort of put all that together, because for people like me and most entrepreneurs, we're not focused and we don't like planning. We don't like setting goals. We just like taking action. And by the way, let me just say, there's nothing wrong with that. If you take action and don't have a plan, you're going to go fast. You're not going to go fastest. You're not going to go as fast as you want to. You'll still get pretty far in life. You're better than somebody who wishes they did it and didn't take any action. Right. So there's the biggest thing I wanted to do when I was writing this book for myself is I wanted to stop feeling bad about myself every day, which I still do sometimes, but too often I would just feel bad for one of 2 reasons. Either I broke a commitment to myself, or I felt like I wasn't living to my full potential.
So that's interesting because you said something there that I want to hone in on because I think that far too few authors admit it, and that is you write the book for you, right? You wrote the book for yourself, and because I've written a lot of books, and I know that every book I've written, when I go back and read it, like I've got one in front of me over here right now, that I wrote about 10 years ago. And I picked it up the other day and I was reading through it. I went, "Ooh, better focus back in on that one." It's really great because what I find is when you're with an audience, whether that's as a speaker or on a podcast or whatever it may be, somebody's going to bring stuff up that you better be either not bullshit about and actually go, "Yeah, I'm living that," or, "You know what? Thanks for the reminder."
So I got a better one for you. Literally this morning, by the way, when you live out of your comfort zone as much more than you can, I forget it becomes uncomfortable. And so I've been more uncomfortable than I've been used to because I'm trying to eat my own dog food. And so I literally picked up my book, read chapter 2, which is Own Your Thoughts.
Yes.
Right. And how to control how you think controls how you feel, controls your actions, which controls the outcomes. And I had to reread that myself and say, okay, own your thoughts, Dave. This is not the end of the world. Go through that process. And it helped. And I was like, yes, yes, this is what I call this is the book right here, whoever's watching it. But to me, it's a framework for me for the next 20 years of my life so I can be more fearless and focused and fast forward my impact on the world around me. So there's a lot of research out there. There's Harvard studies, there's other studies like that say how important it is. If you set goals and then create a plan to hit those goals, you're 10 times more likely to make that happen. So I spent the last 2 years creating a framework for myself, to your point, on how I can be more fearless or focused on the next 20 years. And one of the reasons I'm putting it in a book and putting it out there, one of the ways I fast forward my impact is by sharing this message. And
sure.
My vision is hopefully millions of people around the world will be able to live to their fullest potential, just like so many authors want to happen. And that's what I love about this.
Well, I want to bring it back to something here, which is interesting, is this is about focus, it's about moving fast forward. But at the same time, as you know, many entrepreneurs watch our show, listen to our show, as well as C-suite individuals. They're entrepreneurs, often who are now founders and business owners, etc. And let's face it, entrepreneurship is a way to make money with ADD. For most entrepreneurs have got a high level of ADD, and the idea of focusing and creating a plan with dates is, I guess for some it's terrifying, but I think for all it feels stifling. Talk to us about that, because you and I had a conversation before talking about your own natural ADD, entrepreneurial spirit and, quote, passion. How did you manage to balance that? Because you're not going to stop being entrepreneurial. You're not going to stop being a passionate guy.
Yep.
So how did you manage to balance that with this recognition that not only I've got to do it, but how did you actually do it?
So focus is not necessarily needed to get out of your comfort zone. Focus is needed to stay out of your comfort zone longer. So there's a really important difference there, because you can start a lot of different things and do 20 different projects and get out of your comfort zone each time. But if you want to do it, as you know, year in and year out, if you want to have an award-winning podcast in a process, I got 20 emails over the past 6 months from your team that was all automated, setting me up for success. Trust me, you could not do this. So number one, that's a huge differentiator. So it's not about getting out, it's about staying out. Number two, the 3 steps. Step number 1 is taking action, and the book is 4 ways to build confidence to take action. So that's how you get out of your comfort zone. As soon as you get out of your comfort zone and whatever it is, the first thing you do emotionally is like, what did I just do? I just moved to New York. Why am I here? I just started this business. What am I going to do with it? I'm starting a podcast. I don't know what I'm going to do. I decided I'm going to write a book. Who's going to buy it? And hundreds of things. And all you want to do is, what do you want to do when that happens? All you want to do is go back to your comfort zone, right? And so step 2 is how to nip fear in the bud, and NIP is an acronym. And so emotionally, the book shows you, and step 2 is how to not go back in your comfort zone. And then step 3 is, if you really want to stay long-term and have something work, I have to tell myself till I'm blue in the face, you can't do it without focus long-term. You can't. There's no way. You can do a lot of different things, but you need some sort of focus. So it might be 3 years later when you need to do it. So you can go 3 years. I went 5 years in my business without focus, true focus. And then we couldn't scale anymore. And then we had to hire a coach. And now literally it took us 3 years. And then last year we grew 30% for the first time in 4 years. And we're on that path. So I'm all about taking action, understanding that focus will come when it comes. And it's okay. Like, even when you have focus, it doesn't always work out.
No, of course not. But, one of the things you talked about there in your first step is developing confidence. And I think that, you make a distinction here, and I think it's an important one for us to look at, which is the difference between confidence and bravado. Because many people look confident, but they're not confident. And one of my best analogies of that is courage is subjective. And what I mean by that is, there are things that I do that you go, ooh, or somebody would go, ooh, my goodness, you're so courageous. And I'm like, yeah, not really. That took no courage. It's easy for me. But organizing the files on my desk, that takes courage, because that's not the guy I am. Right. So courage is anything that pushes you outside of your comfort zone, whatever your comfort zone is. And so I know those guys who I used to be a free climber of mountains. There are people who do that, and, they don't see it as particularly courageous. But a sane person might sit for a driving test and feel terrified, or have to stand on a stage like we do and feel terrified. So talk to us about this building confidence and becoming genuinely confident as we step into the discomfort, as the non-comfort zone.
So in the book, for step 1, again, being a self-help addict, I really wanted to make the book as easy for someone to recall as possible. So I've interloped stories with really easy steps. So there's 4 principles to build your confidence. And there could be hundreds, right? But there's 4 that I use. And again, just to remind you, the goal is so you can get out of your comfort zone. And then I'll just share the number 1, because I don't want to turn this into a lesson. The most important one is to not label the outcome of anything you do. And, obviously.
I loved that. And I loved that piece. Don't label the things that you do. Take us deeper into that, because that's like, first of all, we know, just by the way, if you're watching and you go, well, this just happened, how can I not label it? This is shitty. Oh, this just happened and it's marvelous. I get it. I get this, but I love where David takes this. So I really want you to listen to this. I want you to take some notes on this, because this is powerful and important. Go ahead, David.
So I will share the 2-minute parable that puts it all together. The farmer, it's from 2,000 years ago. It's a farmer who buys a Chinese farmer who buys a horse from his neighbor. The next day, the horse escapes. The neighbor comes by and says, oh my God, I'm so sorry your horse escapes. The farmer looks at him and says, good thing, bad thing, who knows? 3 days later, the horse comes back, and it brings back 3 wild horses with it. The neighbor sees this, and by the way, they get them in the stables, and now they have 4 horses. He goes, you're the luckiest guy in town. You got 4 horses. The farmer once again looks at him and says, good thing, bad thing, who knows? The next day, the farmer's son is riding on one of the wild horses and breaks his leg. The neighbor sees this, runs over. He goes, I'm so sorry that this happened. The farmer says, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And then finally, there's a war that breaks out, and all young men have to go fight. The neighbor's son are sent off to war. He comes over crying to the farmer and says, you're so lucky your son doesn't have to go because he's injured. And of course, the moral of the story is a situation or outcome is not bad until you label it bad. And in fact, research has shown people are more likely to label something bad 20 times more than they'll label it good. And so that story literally the day I heard it shifted my thinking, and I haven't gone back. Doesn't mean I don't make mistakes here or there, but it completely set me on a trajectory to take more action to get out of my comfort zone, because you can't, it's not over till it's over.
Yeah. And if you're still breathing, it's not over.
And you've learned it firsthand, unfortunately, in a different way.
Yeah.
So I'm talking, obviously when it comes to this, obviously applies to anywhere in life. I'm specifically talking entrepreneurship.
Of course.
When getting injured or somebody dies is a whole nother level. And so
but it is comparable because, and I'll tell you why. I mean, I've had both happen, so I can talk about it from both sides. But the fact of the matter is that when you come near to death, and by that I don't mean just physical death as in what I went through, but you come near to financial or business death, been there too. The fact of the matter is your identity is crushed in any of those situations. And when we are so egoically designed that when we are invested in that ego and it gets threatened, and we are, we just go, oh my God, it's over. But it's not over, because you can breathe in and you can wait another moment and something else can come, and you don't know what will come. And I love that. I mean, and I openly say to people, I love that. And if you said it to me on the day that I fell, I'd have punched you in the head if I'd have had any strength. But the fact is that until you have enough space to look back retrospectively, you probably can't fully not do it. So you are going to do it, but remember that it's not permanent. Whatever label you stick on it, like, well, this is fantastic. Now, I'll give you an example. I was working with a client about 5 years ago, and he said to me, I want to 10X my business. Can you help me to do that? And I said, I absolutely can. And I'd already looked over the business, said, yeah, I can definitely help you to 10X your business. And he said, well, what do we do? And I said, well, first of all, we don't 10X your business. And he goes, why? I said, because if we 10X your business, you'll be bankrupt within a year. And he went, what do you mean? You do not have the infrastructure in place to 10X your business. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, you have no scalability. So we could 10X your business and you will be fried, burned out, exhausted, and you'll go bankrupt because you won't be able to meet the orders. And he's like, oh my God. But everybody's on the 10X kick, right? Yeah. But it's not actually a good thing if you're not ready for it, right? Yeah. So the blessing is, here's $10 million instead of $1 million. Oh, that's great. Is it? Now you got to make these orders. I have a very good friend of mine years ago who got his book came out. He did very well. He got picked up by Costco. Costco ordered 20,000 books, which is a hell of a lot of books. But what people don't know is, as wonderful as that is, Costco is a consignment store. People don't know that. It's a consignment store. They order your books. They take them in. What they don't sell gets shipped back to you. And how is it shipped back to you? They throw it in a box, and you pay the shipping when it comes back. You've got a bunch of damaged books that you had to pay the shipping for, which you now have to sell at less than cost. And he almost went under with a best-selling book because Costco ordered it. And he says, whatever you do, sell it to Costco in small pieces. Only agree to a small amount at a time. But that's an example of, oh, this is fantastic. Is it? Or, oh, this is disastrous. Is it? Worst thing that ever happened to me, I fell off a mountain. Best thing that ever happened to me, I fell off a mountain.
One way to put it in a nice formula that Jack says in his book, and I've seen in other places, is E plus R equals O. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's event plus response equals outcome. And too often in life, people want to change the event. They want to pretend that they didn't fall off the mountain. They want to go back in time and say, I shouldn't have gone there that day. I shouldn't have been in the rain. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. And they can't. So the only thing they can control is the response to the event. And that's why there's some people who just go through, can deal with a lot more adversity than others and take bigger risks. And that was the other thing in my life where the reason I decided to become president of EO and move to Barcelona and a couple other things was I was feeling kind of like, overwhelmed. And I'm like saying to myself, I want to have a big impact and accomplish a lot in my life. And if I'm overwhelmed now, how can I do the bigger things that I thought I was going to do? And how can I have the bigger impact? So I need to figure out a framework to get me there. And for me, it was about being fearless and focused. I looked at my journals for the past 11 years because I journal online and then printed. So it was over 600 pages of journals. And I looked to see all the walls that I hit and couldn't break through. And the two common themes were either lack of confidence in myself or lack of focus. And so I worked on the framework to overcome that. So
fantastic.
I can do it more often than not. You can't be fearless 100% of the time, but you keep moving forward.
So let's talk about this. Let's talk about impact. Because again, that's a very, very subjective thing. You know, what somebody thinks of impact is maybe not what I think of it, maybe not what you don't think of it as impact. And let's tie that into the fact that you're picking up stakes, as we said in the introduction. You know, you've been the president of EO New York. You know, you've got this company that's the #1 resource for continuing education for people in the law world. Pretty amazing, fabulous stuff. You live in a great city, New York City. You're married. You got a couple of twins, I think. Your twins are 10, is that right?
Twins and a 5-year-old, yeah.
All right, so you got 3 kids, and you're going to pick up and you're going to move to Barcelona. That's pretty impressive. Talk to us about, I mean, that's definitely stepping out of your comfort zone, but talk to us about that in the context of impact.
Yeah. So it's pretty, I think everybody will be able to relate to this. Regardless if you're 20, 15, or 30, or 40, or 60, or 70, as soon as you have some level of success, whether it's a nice house or it's a business that's doing well, there's this part in your head that's like, okay, I'm comfortable, I'm good. And it happened to me at least, okay? And I know a lot of people it's happened to, where
Absolutely.
I just sort of felt into my comfort zone. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with your comfort zone because it's comfortable. The only thing wrong with your comfort zone is if your head keeps telling you something different and it says you want to do this, but you're just, and you feel bad about yourself. If you're totally fine exactly where you are, live your life and
enjoy
do that. Yeah, exactly. And so for me, the reason I shifted it from achievement to impact, because I'm pretty comfortable from an achievement. I mean, sure, would I want more money and all this other stuff? Yes. But so it wasn't enough. It wasn't a big enough vision to keep pushing me forward over the next 30 years. It was a big enough thing to push me forward. It was the impact I have on the world around me. And I sat down, took me a long time, and I sat down, I came up with the 3 main areas that I want to have impact on in the next 30 years. And essentially, that's my focus for the next 30 years.
So how does that relate to moving to Barcelona?
It was my children. So I wanted them to experience as much of the world as they could. And they're in 5th grade right now. And in New York, when you move from 5th grade to 6th grade, you move schools. And I knew this was the year. If we were going to try something like this, it was either going to be now or in 20 years from now when my kids are in college and we wouldn't have this opportunity. And they were so excited for the opportunity to travel and to see so much of the world. And many people in the US, we grew up with a US only mentality. And so to me, this was just a step in that direction to open up their minds. So it was really, I mean, I'm not going to be, I'll be a little bit selfish. It was for me too. By the way, you can, impact is about yourself as well. If you can't impact yourself first, if you don't feel confident in yourself, you can't focus on anybody else, as you know. So it doesn't mean it's not about you. Be selfish for sure, but it was the children, that's why we pushed to do it now.
Now I know that, we've been talking about this focus and fearlessness and fast forward in the mindset and all those kinds of things and all those things. But how does that play out in the long term for you in the context of, say, do you look at yourself for the year 2030, 2040, 2050? I know that's a long way out, but do you look at yourself in that context?
So in the last page or the last few pages of the book, I created an epilogue, and I put my 2050 vision on there because I wanted it in writing, and I actually did it in past tense. So now for the first time, as of this past year, I'm now thinking to 2050 and where I'm going to be spending my energy. Before this, I did not. And I was thinking about, what am I doing the next 12 months? And I knew in my head what I was passionate about, but I felt a little directionless in the regards to, okay, I'm going to keep growing the company, but then what? I'm going to keep doing this, but then what? And the three areas that my focus is on sustainability, education, and individuals' potential. Fast forwarding people's impact, but helping people live to their full potential is obviously something I care a lot about.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I know that you're very passionate about in your business is, and even in EO, which is transparency. How does that play into all of this?
Well, I think, so there's two things. One is the book itself, and what I try to do in my conversations, maybe almost too much, is I try to talk about that 10% so 90% of the time we're confident and feel like we can take on the world, in general. And 10%, it's that 10% of the time where, like, you're sitting in the middle of your living room and out of nowhere, you just start getting stressed and the weight of the world is on your shoulders and you're not even sure why. It literally happened to me this morning about, all the things that I was trying to do, and you got to go through that. And so in terms of transparency, I'm really trying to show that side of entrepreneurship and life, because I know so chapter 5 and the end for Nip Fear in the Bud is not alone. The most important thing that we all need to know, and we all know this, is we want every single thing that you're going through, thousands, if not millions of successful people have gone through in one form or another. And so to me, transparency is about constantly sharing that we're not alone in these feelings. And the best way I can do it is sharing all the doubts and lack of fear and lack of, the fear of failure and lack of confidence I've had. And my mom was really upset by that, though, because she was like, Dave, you've got to show people that you know what you're doing and you're successful, which I've shifted the book a little bit so it wasn't so, down on me, because people need to know that you have credibility. She's like, don't tell people these things. And so that is where I try to be transparent, at least about the book. And certainly I'm transparent in my company in other areas, but I'm happy to get into any.
But again, this is a very important thing. This was a big part of my last book, Fiercely Loyal, where I talked about the need and the power of vulnerability. You and I talked about this on your show, the need and power of vulnerability. And, and I think that vulnerability becomes misunderstood. It becomes a nice cliche that people are throwing around in business these days, but they don't really understand. And vulnerability is not about emotionally vomiting on people, but it is about having transparency with discernment. So you don't need to know that every detail of my emotional life, but you do need to know the context of my emotional state as it relates to you. And the best example I've given out on several times is Tim Cook. I loved Tim Cook's transparency. Tim Cook came out and said he was gay. That's transparent. Probably pissed off some people, and probably other people were cheering him on. He didn't tell you the details of what he does in the bedroom, because you don't need to know that. That's emotional vomit, right? He just told you what you needed to know. And that, it was transparent about it. He didn't hide, but he also didn't go to the other side. And I think that people don't understand that there's a balance there. Transparency and emotional vulnerability is not about just puking your emotional stuff on people. You have to still lead. And part of it is to show the other side. So the transparency of it is, hey, listen, I'm feeling like crap right now, and I'm feeling like I've lost all my confidence. I know this won't last because I've been here 10,000 times before. But what's important for me to do is to share it with you, because as I sit here and with you, my board, my team, my advisors, there's a good chance that at least one of you is feeling exactly the same, or felt this way yesterday, or will feel this way tomorrow. And I just want you to know that we're in this together. And everybody goes, oh, and there's a weight off, and then everybody's lifting everybody else up. That's powerful. And I think that's what you're really talking about here, right?
You said it perfectly. You've done this one time before, I think, but that's exactly it.
Maybe just once.
100%.
That's it. Yeah, and it's so important. Now, you success is one thing, impact is a whole other, but success, as we all know, is a journey. It's not a straight line from beginning to success. That's not how it works. It's a very wiggly line along the way. What's one thing that you did for a long time that actually blocked you from success? I know you've talked about some of the things, but is there something that really stands out for you that you just kept doing and just was blocking you from success?
Yeah, so I had 3 different COOs in a 6-year period. So each one lasted about 2 years. Each one brought value and helped the company move forward, but I made the same mistake with each one of them.
Wow.
And it took me hiring a coach to recognize what I was doing. And there's 2 things that I was doing. And by the way, spoiler alert, they have to do with lack of confidence and lack of focus. The number one, in terms of lack of confidence, I created a superhero status on each person that I worked with who was the COO, because each one of them was confident. They were A-type personality, and they were better at me in, let's say, sales, or they're better at me in talking. And what I did was I said, because they're better at me than X, they're probably better than me in everything, versus thinking they have the strengths and I have the strengths. So I found myself just not listening to my instincts when they would say to do something and following their lead. So it led to bad decisions and just me not being happy with the decisions. And then obviously I still wasn't happy with them. So eventually led to friction. So that was a lack of confidence.
Yeah.
The second thing, and by the way, sometimes it just takes experience to build more confidence. It's just like,
of course,
you don't become a basketball star overnight. You don't become a pilot overnight. You don't become an entrepreneur overnight. It just doesn't happen. And the second one was in regards to lack of focus. I had no accountability with them. I had no structure. I had no true planning. I had no true long-term vision. And so what would happen is when they would do something, I would be afraid to micromanage them. So we didn't really have any touch base meetings except, informally. And the challenge that led to was there would be 2 CEOs in the company, because I wasn't giving them enough direction. So they were coming in and saying A, then I would say B, literally in the same meeting, because we weren't on the same page. And it led to more friction. And then go back to the superhero status. I start doubting my own opinion. So in one form or another, this happened for 6 years. Wow. Until I finally hit my low moment, and I recognized I was going through the same pattern, and I ended it with the 3rd COO, and I said, I cannot do this again. I cannot rebuild this process again. And I found a coach from scaling up from the Gazelle's platform. It costs a lot of money for us as a business, but I had it. And that's where, for me, step 1 was I took action, because I was out of my comfort zone not to spend that much money on a coach, but I needed to do it. And that's where things started changing from at least that process standpoint.
But again, that's such an important point that you've made there. And I just want everybody to get is you made a decision to do something that was uncomfortable, something that, your egoic mind could have said, we can't afford, you can't do this. Yet you're 30% more profitable because you followed that direction. Oftentimes when people say to me, I can't afford to do this, whether it's hire me or whatever it is, and I always go, that statement there tells me you can't afford not to, because there's every party who knows you need this, so you're not going to do it. And, I'm not saying don't assess. Of course, you've got to fully assess and make sure it's the right decision for you. But that courage to step into that is the willingness to, and this is what I talked about before about identity. It's the willingness to let go of what I had, but that's so known, to step into what I want, which is still somewhat vague until you land there. So that was really courageous.
So of course, then looking back, it's easy to say that. At the time, I felt desperate and I needed to do it. And I felt, like this is the right move. And there's the other thing, yes, I guess the metric is always revenue, because that's sort of the growth area. But to your point about the 10X conversation, we needed to rebuild our infrastructure and our foundation. I am working full-time from Barcelona at my company. I'm just 6 hours ahead. I could have never done that 4 years ago. We were not set up. We didn't have the systems and processes in place. There's another book called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickham, who talks about the visionary integrator. By the way, I'm super proud that Gino who wrote Traction and Rocket Fuel, and Vern Harnish, who wrote Scaling Up. They both gave me really great endorsements for my book. And
Fantastic.
it means the world to me because they've had such an impact on my life in terms of their book. And for them to read the book and really feel like it had an impact, it was like, it just felt like, okay, I was in the right direction in terms of what I'm trying to do here. And Hal Elrod, I don't know if you know The Miracle Morning, he wrote the foreword for my book based on sort of our relationship together. So it just means so much to have such really great authors and impactful people to buy into what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Those are pretty significant endorsements. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Now,
I got to promote it a little bit, right?
Absolutely, you should, and that's excellent. Now, we talked about impact. We talked about you being a dad, having kids, etc., moving to Barcelona. What is the dream that you hold as a father for your children?
So it's interesting because this morning I'm walking my son to school because my wife had to leave early, and he's 10 years old. He's yelling at me that whenever I walk him to school, he's always late because I'm much slower than mom. I don't know the schedule. I don't know what's going on. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. And like, he's complaining and, all that stuff. I'm like, damn, man, really? And I'm just silent. And then I'm like, this is terrible. Like, this is how he thinks. And then 5 minutes later, it's like, he didn't even remember what he said. And he's like joking with me about like doing these great things together. And I realized, too often, and I literally had dinner with parents the other day who were like, felt like they were the worst parents ever, and their kids are 7. And I realized, like, my dad and I are very close right now. And it's not that we weren't close as children, but like, we didn't really form a true strong relationship until I became an entrepreneur, because I realized how much of his attitude has made him successful in life. And I truly respected that. And he's done so much for me. And so for me, the most important thing right now is not my kids thinking me as their best friend, which I really would love. And I think that's important to me, but it's that I'm setting them up with the right mental tools. And the challenge is, how it is. It's easier for me to teach somebody else's kids how to have the right mindset than teach your own. And so that's the struggle I face, because even the dedication, I say, I hope you can use this at some point in your life to move forward. So I just hope I can give them the proper mental tools to help them be happy in life. I mean, this is what any parent says. And certainly I think entrepreneurship is a real key to that success, if that's what they want.
So is that the dream, though? Is that dream that the dream you hold for your kids, is that they'll become entrepreneurs, or is it something else?
I don't have any expectations of what they should become, because I don't know. That I don't have a path where they should go, because that's not up to me. It's up to them.
Yeah, that's not what I'm actually saying. I'm actually, what's your dream for them? Not as in what's the path that they should take, but the dream that you hold for them as human beings.
Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, like, the only thing I can think, and this is probably not enough, right, is you want your kids to be happy and to feel like they have value and to give back to the world and to be productive and to have impact. And I don't know, I feel like I'm failing in this answer. Give me some guidance here.
Well, I think that, we all know the old adage that parents put on their children what they were not able to fulfill. We know that. And that's actually a psychological truth, and unless we're conscious, and then it shifts. I mean, the mom who's pushing her daughter into ballet class because she couldn't become a ballet dancer, whatever it is, or my father-in-law wanted my wife to become a doctor because that's what he was set up to be. He got into Oxford to go to become a doctor and couldn't afford it. So he wanted her to go into medical. The fact she didn't want to was kind of irrelevant. So that happens a lot. I mean, we put those on. But when it comes to the dream, often there is a dream we hold for our children that is beyond career, beyond those kinds of things. And it's about the kind of human being we hope we model for them to be. That's beyond happy, because happy is temporary, or beyond successful, which is also temporary.
One of the things that I realized a few years ago with my wife is I spent all this time reading these help books for myself and my business, but nothing for the kids. Mm-hmm. And we found this book called The 3 Questions for the Frantic Family by Pat Lencioni, who wrote a
Patrick Lencioni.
Yeah, thank you.
Patrick Lencioni.
And essentially helps you create a vision for your family and sets up the guidelines and the core values. And we sat down with our kids a few years ago and we created it. It was really great. The challenge is we haven't really looked at it that much since, and it takes work. So I do think, there is to your point, like that's what I do feel like in a way, I feel good about my answer because I didn't have it. Like when you said you want them to be an entrepreneur, I don't care. I just want them to do what's right and be happy. The challenge to me is like, you don't realize, because when you look back to your kids, the effect that you're actually having on your children. And for me, all I can say is I hope I'm not putting, sometimes we say no too much to them or because we have our own fears of them doing stuff, or my son is super creative and he makes a mess in the kitchen but he creates his things. We say no because he doesn't clean it up. And so maybe we should be holding him accountable more. So certainly that's an area where I just would love to spend as much time with them as possible in the right ways.
Right. That was a really great answer. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Because
I feel like I could have done better, but I thank you.
Well, no, because it's great because you didn't have a down pat answer and you did have to think and you had to dig a little deeper. And as a result, it made you question about, giving your son more room to be creative, but at the same time, not being one of those bullshit parents who says, oh, yes, dear. And the kid never learns any frickin' boundaries and never uses any accountability. So, as parents, we're not parents to be best friends. We're parents to guide them into the world, and guiding them into the world means sometimes they won't like it because you got to set a boundary, not a frickin' rule, but a boundary. And because a boundary always has a why, a rule has because I said so. Yeah. That's very different than here's why this works and here's what the consequences are, which is very powerful and empowering that when we look back on them, we're like, yeah, that's what shaped my life and made it better.
I'll say this in terms of leading by example. So my dad was an attorney and he had his own firm, and he was the one attorney that I've ever met. Whenever you asked what he did, he was a personal injury attorney, loved what he did, loved it. He always said that. And the reason he loved it, he felt like he was Robin Hood, getting from the rich insurance companies, giving to most of his clients who were poor, and I think subconsciously seeing my father controlling his own destiny and loving what he did was probably, or it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg, because, it's a DNA thing too, but it made me sort of subconsciously know I'd always be an entrepreneur in some form or another. And so the best that I can do is lead by example for my kids. As they grow, and good thing, bad thing, who knows? I'll try the best that I can.
Well, but the thing about it is that you have learned that the value is, it doesn't matter what you do. What matters is, do you enjoy it? Are you loving it? Do you feel like it's worthy? And is it having the kind of impact that you want to have? Right. And so whether you're selling lollipops or whether you're selling legal courses or whether you're doing personal injury, it's not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is it having the kind of impact that you want to have?
100%. And even less than that, before impact is, are you putting in the effort that you want to be putting in and being more fearless and focused? Because as I say to myself, is actually forget the impact for a second. If you put in 100% every day, if you were as fearless as focused as you could be, not necessarily 100% fearless, and you lived sort of that vision in your head, and you still didn't have the impact you had, you'd still probably you wouldn't have the regrets for somebody who didn't give the effort. So, because not everything's going to work out the way you want it to.
No, and the thing I'd like to sort of qualify here for people is, what I always want people to know is, you are having impact. You're sitting on the couch eating potato chips, you're having impact, right? Yeah. You may be having impact on the couch and creating a dip in it. You're having an impact on your body with the potato chips. You're having an impact on your kids by the model that you're leading. The question is, what impact do you want to have? and what are you going to do to have it? Because you can't have the kind of impact that you want to have unless you're willing to be courageous. And that's it. That's it. You can tell me everything you want, but the bottom line is, until you grow the gonads to say, I'm willing to step up in spite of my own fear, in spite of the potential rejection, because I want to have the impact, you are going to have impact. It just might not be the kind you want.
Do you know Jeff Hoffman? He was the CEO of Priceline. He does a lot of entrepreneur stuff right now. He woke up on a Sunday morning at 4 a.m. to get on a flight to come to a young entrepreneur conference that we had in New York for obviously we weren't paying him, he didn't need the money, just so he could speak to the students. And he goes, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't wake up at 4 a.m. unless I truly cared about the impact that I was having. And that sums it up.
Absolutely. I'm all about that. That's a big part of my life. I'm fully with you. Listen, mate, this has been wonderful. I want to finish as we come towards the end here by a couple of quick things. One is, what's your guilty pleasure, David?
Haagen-Dazs coffee ice cream has been my favorite ice cream forever.
Yeah.
There's something about it. And if you haven't had it, you need to try it. Put rainbow sprinkles on it. I can eat the whole container if I wanted.
So if that's in the house and the kids are there, it's like, do
not in the house. That's why.
That's why it's not in the house, because it will get eaten. Fantastic. Yeah. That's awesome. What is, as we finish up, I like to always leave with, what is a practical piece of guidance you would like to leave our audience with? Because, all this is nice in theory, and I encourage them to go read your book, and it's a great book and they should read it. And we're going to tell them more about that in a moment. But as a single practical piece of advice that our viewers, our listeners can go away and do pretty much immediately, what would you recommend?
You have to, this is advice from my father to me when I was struggling many times. And he said, you have to make a decision. If you do not make a decision, everything's going to get backed up. And this is the advice I want to leave you with. Whatever decision you make today will not matter 50 years from today. It's so insignificant. Any decision, unless you're hitting the nuclear button, but any decision you make is not going to matter. So just make the freaking decision and move forward.
Good advice. Great advice.
I don't always follow it, but you got to keep thinking it.
Exactly. You got to keep remembering it. Put it somewhere so you can see it. Hey, David, it's been great having you here. Please share with our audience how they can tap into you and all the resources that you offer in the book, etc. Sure.
So fastforwardmindset.com, ffwdmindset.com, davidschnurman.com. They all go to the same place. If you just Google my name, and David Schnurman at Instagram, David Schnurman at Facebook, at Twitter, try to keep it consistent. And if you Google my name, you'll see all these different videos that I've done just to try to add value for people about sort of being more fearless and focused.
Fantastic. Thank you. We will definitely post all of those on the show notes. It's been a pleasure and an honor having you with us, David. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
I wish we can do this every day. It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And we have to find a way to make it happen more often. That is for sure.
Absolutely.
So for you, dear listeners, always remember that information is worth the hole in the donut. Transformation takes place when you have application. So make sure that you actually listen back, take notes, and think about what you can apply. And of course, I highly recommend that you go grab the book and go through the exercises. The book has got lots of exercises in it to actually have you stop and pay attention so that you can actually develop that fast forward mindset. To hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this show or any of our past shows, you can go to Facebook and look for Dov Baron Leadership and Loyalty Podcast, and there you'll be able to chat about the show. To find out more about how you can hire me, Dov Baron, as your speaker or strategist for your organization, just simply go to fullmonty.com. fullmontyleadership.com/consulting or fullmontyleadership.com/speaking. You find out all you need to know right there. And remember that the research consistently shows that even the fastest growing companies face the similar challenge, that they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing their talent, only to have them leave at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in the training and developing of your talent, only have them leave before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, because you can't outsource authenticity. Also remember to go stop by the Matrix like the movie, .fullmontyleadership.com. No triple W's, just matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, and get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tool to tap into finding your areas in the 5 areas of leadership where you can be strongest. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you can fast forward your mindset for greater impact. I'm Dov Barron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach the next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.